Welcome to the two sides of the story. I'm your host, Kadim Al-Wiley. The big question today, should the U.S. resume relations with Syria, especially now it's under a regime led by former Al-Qaeda member and some foreign fighters? The answer is very obvious. Yes, it's people can change. Syria need some change, need a new and a fresh start with the new regime. It was under the regime of Bashar al-Assad for about 50 years, his father and himself, the Ba'ath Party, and Syria right now, it needs some fresh start. It needs to open up for foreign investment, for a new military structures, a new security apparatus, a new democratic system. That's why the U.S. should have full scale of relationship, could resume military relationship and diplomatic relationship with the new regime. There are some people who are scared of the new regime, but if the U.S. talk to the new regime, especially the interim president Ahmed al-Shara, who met with President Trump in Riyadh, and also he's backed by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the president of the United Arab Emirates and Qatar and other Arab nations. That's why he has some legitimacy, and he should sit with the president and to negotiate for the way ahead and the future of Syria and Syrian people. That will enhance the democratic process. Although the new government, it's represented by one entity, it's the Jabhat al-Nusra or Jabhat Ahrar al-Sham or Jabhat Tahrir al-Sham, the HTS. But still, it's the first step, and still needs more steps towards democracy and a free society. Without the help of the United States of America and also the international community, Syria will not advance toward democracy and open society. Instead of being closed society, isolated nation, and it was just hosting the enemies of the United States like Russia, China, or Iran and Iranian proxies. Now it's a good friend of the United States. Plus, weak, small government friendly to the U.S. It's good for the U.S. interest and the safety of Israel, instead of dictatorship and stubborn regime back in the day, which posed threat to the U.S. and Israel at the same time. And also the new regime, it has local support, and that's why the U.S. should respect the will of the people in Syria. The people have got tired. They're sick of being targeted by the al-Assad regime and by Iran, by its militia, and now they need to have a new start, a new life, just like the rest of the world. But there is other side of the story. Let's go there. Other side of the story, absolutely not. It's a risk of a future violence. Even if al-Shara claim he changed his ideology, might still exist. Ideology is ideology. You cannot change it. Once a terrorist, always terrorist. That cannot be changed. And if the U.S. legitimize the regime of Ahmed al-Shara and Abu Muhammad al-Jolani formerly and Jabhat al-Nusra formerly, now the interim government of Syria, if the U.S. give a legitimacy and recognition to that regime, the regime will be empowered and will be emboldened and will bring more foreign fighters. And just like the back in the day when Afghanistan, led by Taliban in the 90s, what they did, they hosted Al-Qaeda and hosted other terrorist group to harm the U.S. and the West. These foreign fighters, they suffer from the lack of culture and lack of language. That's why they treat the Syrian people, especially the seculars, the minorities, really, really bad, and they want to control the whole country and they want to impose their ISIS-like ideology. So I don't think it's a good idea to legitimize and recognize that regime unless if there is an assurance that the regime and Jabhat al-Nusra and all the former terrorist groups will leave Damascus and leave the government and hand the government to a secular parties or secular groups. And that's a dream, because once they grab especially the Islamic parties, once they grab power, they will not let it go unless it will end up with a civil war and blood flooding on the street. And that's also betrayal of the U.S. and the American and the West principles and democracy and freedom. How could they negotiate and have business with who recently fought against the principle of the West and the principles of the freedom and democracy and respecting other opinion, especially the minorities. And that will put the U.S. troops in danger. The U.S. troops are existing in the east of the Euphrates and some other area in Syria. And if you empower the regime and you supply them with weapons or trainings, they might turn against U.S. forces and the U.S. presence in the region. Having a government adopting Salafi ideology, that will increase sectarian violence. And recently, we've seen what happened. The government forces went to the southern province of As-Suwaida, which is the minority of the Druze living there, and they make the majority in the province of As-Suwaida. The result of the clashes between the new government forces and the Druze resulted about 150 casualties, between dead and injured and some captured. And also there are footage that one of the government forces member, he captured a Druze spiritual leader and he shaved his beard and mustache. And beard and mustache in a Druze ideology, just like other religions, it's respected. So that person went to the sheikh or went to the Druze leader and he shaved his beard and mustache on the camera. It shows how disrespectful the new Syrian regime element and forces towards minorities and the rest of the Syrian people. Former Al-Qaeda members leading the country, that's a major red flag, and that could send a red flag to the U.S. allies in the region and the neighboring countries. But between this and that, there is always a gray zone. It can be only black and white, and I will leave that up to you. You decide which story is more fair to you. Please subscribe for more debate where every story gets a fair fight. I'm Kadim Al-Wiley.